Hello and welcome back to the channel. I always look at other channels of people around my topic on YouTube. Something which I've noticed quite a lot of on channels of this type is that people often explain why they're giving up something because they are now 60, or things they won't do anymore because they're now 50, or that sort of video. I'm sure you've come across them, and I thought I'd try and do one myself, hopefully not repeating what the other channels do, and I have nothing against them at all, and good luck to them all. But I thought maybe some of mine were slightly different, and it would be worth exploring on this video what my 5 things that I don't do now I'm 60, because I do think they're slightly different to the normal list of, won't wear uncomfortable clothes or uncomfortable shoes or things like that, don't care what people think, and all those sorts of ones. So I thought I'd take you through my 5 things that I no longer do now I'm over 60. So number 1 is that I'm not going to stop caring about what people think of me. Now, I know that this is often one which comes up in other people's views because they regard it as being a sort of sign of weakness almost, that in the past you've always been concerned about how you come across to other people and things like that. Now, I have thought about this, and I actually do still care what people think of me. So specifically, I care about the opinions of people who I'm with every day, my wife, my children, my close friends. I do care what they think of me, and I think in some respects it's a good thing to care what these people think of you, because we all have to rub along together, and if I stop noticing how I'm impacting other people or how I come across to other people, for me that's where misunderstandings can sometimes arise. Now, do I care what, do I care what somebody who I've never met thinks of me? Well, possibly not necessarily, but you get my meaning. Yes, there are people who I do care what they think of me, and I'm going to continue doing that because I like interacting with people and getting my opinions across and them understanding what makes me tick. And that's all of this is part of caring about what they think of you. Okay, so number 2, again, is something of a reaction to some of the standard ones which appear on these types of videos. I think several people mention the fact that they don't want to waste time. They want to treat time as a precious resource not to be wasted, especially now when they can see on the horizon is a point where time becomes immaterial. And I think that part of my philosophy of life, for want of a better word, is actually there is still plenty of time. When you reach 60, my view is that you still have probably another 30 years or at least 25 years left. If you look at the average age, if you reach 60, your average mortality is another 25 years for women and men. If I lived as long as my father, it would mean I had another 33 years, 34 years. So for me, I think it's perfectly okay to stop, pause. I quite enjoy staring into space and thinking about nothing for an hour. And I sometimes think that this insistence on making sure that you make the best use of your time remaining is a kind of an invitation to acting sometimes like a bit of a headless chicken. And I don't want to do that. I want to continue to work at my own pace. I enjoy taking time over things. I enjoy the sort of the details within tasks, and for me that's something which I don't want to lose, simply because we have a defined time left. We've always had a defined time left, so what's the difference now that the defined time is slightly shorter? I enjoy doing those sorts of slow tasks So number 3 is one which in some form or another often appears on other people's lists of things they're given up. Maybe not quite in this context, so I'm just going to explain. I want to stop having discussions with people designed in some way to change their opinion about something. Sometimes they're arguments, sometimes they're just sort of vehement discussions where you have a different view to somebody else. Because the one thing I do know, in 60 years of discussions about religion, politics, you name it, I don't think I've ever seen anybody change their mind fundamentally as a result of a discussion that we've had. And to me, this does feel like it's a waste of time, but more dangerously, it can put your relationship with somebody who you care about at risk, because sometimes people fall out dramatically. And I can think of at least one instance in my life where somebody who I deeply cared about, our relationship fundamentally changed as a result of a what was, let's call it a row. But it was a row about politics, and neither of us had any control or power to change anything in the world, and therefore we just had differing opinions. And in those circumstances, I think it's sometimes full of jeopardy to try and change somebody's opinion about something. Yes, I know there are questions of degree, and if you say nothing, there is a temptation to believe you're tacitly agreeing with somebody. But I think you can say, well, actually, I don't necessarily agree with that, but, let's just move on and try and get past it. And so that, for me, is something which I very much stopped doing in my later years, the second half of my life. And as such, I think I have repaired a few bridges, and I have not put mines underneath some other bridges, if that makes sense. Okay, number 4 is something of a hobby horse for me, and it's one which I still do, and I really want to stop, but we'll see whether I ever actually manage it. I think we all know that feeling of waking up in the middle of the night and a worry gets into our head, and that can be the end of the sleep for that night. I really want to stop doing that, and in fact I am much better than I used to be about waking up in the middle of the night and worrying. And I think the change came for me when I recognised that in the morning, when I thought about the things I'd been worrying about, they didn't seem quite so terrible as they had at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night. And it could be that literally, I tend to lose perspective in the middle of the night. And that could be literally because there is no perspective when you're lying in the dark. You don't have anything to focus on, and your eyes, and maybe it's even your brain, sort of become slightly unmoored from their hinges a bit. That could be it. But the one thing which I am attempting to do, because I know that I'm better off addressing these worries when I'm properly awake in the middle of the day, the one thing I'm attempting to stop doing is lying awake worrying in the middle of the night. And the practical way that I do that now is to try and wake up properly, recognize that I'm now worrying, think that I will deal with this in the morning as a priority, first thing I do before I do anything else, and I will address it and try and work out if there is anything I can do to reduce the worry. And if there isn't, at least then I'll have thought about it and maybe come up with some contingency plans or something like that. But that's number 4. That's something I'm trying not to do. I'm better at it, and that's worrying in the middle of the night about things. And number 5, the last one, is one which I need to be quite careful about explaining. So for me, I do know that moaning and complaining is a waste of time unless it provokes any action. So But then I need to be very careful, because I went through a stage probably in my 30s where I used to always complain if things weren't right in a restaurant or a meal, and I would get quite animated about it, and I would insist on things being correct. And I remember at about the age of about 45 it was, sometimes I would recognise then that I was actually doing more harm than good by complaining. Yes, something was wrong, but in making the complaint and insisting that things were done correctly, I actually spoiled the atmosphere for the people who I was with, and it had become counterintuitive. You know, the evening was a mess because, ostensibly because, I don't know, we waited half an hour for our meal or something like that. But in fact, it could have been better if I had complained and then remained calm and made the best of it. So there is a kind of a point where complaining is counterproductive. I'm not suggesting I never complain, because I definitely do. But for me now, I try and put it in the context of the meal and enjoying it and making the best of what might be a suboptimal position. And then, much more clear cut, the whole thing about moaning. I really can't stand now listening to people moaning about things, especially if it's something that we have no agency or power over. Neither of us can do anything. The government, the NHS here in the UK, it's something which we have to live with. And yes, we complain about it, but if we complain about it, we're just, in some respects, just wasting our own time. Unless we can do something about it, I see that it's ultimately futile to complain. Yes, I do understand as well that by complaining you draw things to the attention of the people who might be able to change it. But let's face it, complaining because you've been waiting for an hour for your doctor's appointment, to the receptionist or even to the GP, at the end of the day, that's not something they can affect. It's something, if you're really animated about it, you need to try and get to the highest level possible. Take it up here in the UK with your Member of Parliament, something like that, to make sure that they are aware of the challenges being faced by you. Okay, so I hope those 5 were interesting. I tried to make them not the normal ones which everybody seems to refer to when they're making these types of videos. I don't think they were, but I do think they represent something of a change, and it's something which I've encountered and am trying to fix and have fixed in my own life, and maybe they're of interest to other people around the same age as me. Anyway, if you found that interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you could comment or like, especially if you could subscribe, because that tells me that there's something going on here that I should persevere with. It's early days for this channel, and it would be nice to get some feedback to see if I need to change anything. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll catch up with you on the next one, which is coming along in a few days. And I'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.